Today we talk about the configuration of VS Code, and I always explain why I deliver a presentation on a given topic. It all starts with the history of programming. The same for this presentation. We were working, programming. Of course, I'm looking at my friend's screen, and I see that my friend has no outline view. A panel that says that views displays a hierarchy structure. I enabled it for him. Another colleague comes over and says, "Okay, what's that?" I enabled outline view for him as well. Another one comes. So I enabled outline view for him as well. There must be a certain dependency. There must be some reasons. There are some things that they consider to be a must-have, and some people just live with them normally. And then it occurred to me, probably I am missing out on something myself. Why does it happen? To grasp the whole code, I started digging into plugins and settings, and this turns out to be way beyond my scope of perception. So this is not going to be an exhaustive presentation. For the sake of time, I cut out several elements. What do IDEs do? Integrated development environments. They help you write code. They also can run tests. It has a built-in terminal. It has remote coding when you can code something and debug something on a remote machine. It has live share for pair programming, a version control system, VCS. You can have diagrams, graph, REST client, 3D model views, lots of various plugins to suit your taste. We only talk about writing code. It's broken down in three parts: orientation code, optimization of input. How do we write code more efficiently. It includes formatting, templates, autocomplete. And thirdly, which is important, refactoring, linting, type checking, refactoring. I can see that you're taking pictures. At the end of my presentation, I have clickable links, so please feel free to follow the links and check out the plugins or documentation as listed. A very important question: when does the presentation end, and when do we have coffee? 3 topics: navigation, input, optimization. Then we'll touch upon security. How don't you get infected with malware with all the plugins? Then we consider other alternative IDEs apart from VS Code. Let's start with navigation. This is what my IDE looks like. Let's go through it real quick. How does it work for me? Question 1. When I open IDE, where am I? What kind of a project is it? When I have multiple windows, I'm getting confused. Here we can check this out. This is the product title. But there are plugins, Peacock and Space Colors, that color your project depending on the project. You can tell the context you're in based on colors. This is workspace colors. Normally people have an open activity bar on the left. It's actually useless because it can be fully replaced with hotkeys. But if you're lazy to learn the hotkeys, you can pin them up there with activity bar location settings. It helps you to save some space if you have a small screen. File tree, it's almost perfect. We have a file tree where we can see where we are, which files we have in the project. We also have breadcrumbs. This is our location in the hierarchy of files. These are clickable, so we can move around across neighboring directories easily. Minimap. Minimap answers the question, how long will this terra continue? It normally takes up space. It's not quite useless, so this can be hidden with this setting. Edit minimap false. It saves some space. Some people don't have outline view, as I noticed. First, we activate this right-hand side panel with this default visibility setting, and it's always visible across projects. And we can go to the right-hand side from outline view. The setup is this. On the left-hand side we have a file directory, and on the right we have a hierarchy of logical structures. We see classes and methods we have in a file. It can display various variables, but it's way too much information. So you can use the show variables false setting. Another life hack to share. When you set your cursor on a given method, in outline view, you expect this method to be highlighted. By default, this is disabled. There is no way to enable this in settings, so you have to click on the 3 dots button and enable follow cursor at all times. This is indeed a very handy tool to see where your cursor is in the logical hierarchy. Moving on to the next one. I have to mention GitHub Next. The guys at GitHub Next always invent things to make us happy. They have lots of stuff for LLMs. They have a few experimental features which are not available in the IDE, but can be added to the IDE. One of the fun features, unfortunately, is not implemented yet. It's just the concept. When you have some code, for instance, you had an error right here, but then you drop it, and the radar shows, look at this line. It's pretty similar. Probably you want to throw it error in the same way. It's an awesome feature. I'm looking forward to its implementation. I have a question. We are in a new repo. We're new to the project. What is going on? We're trying to figure out. On GitHub Next, there is a page called repo visualization. What does it mean? It takes any repository and makes a visualization. These are the source files for CPython. By looking at this diagram, we can tell which structures we have, which folders we have, the files in the folders. some news, something for iOS, a dedicated folder for iOS, we have documentation, and we have libraries. This is a generic representation of a repository. There are plugins. For instance, Swark. You install a plugin, it connects to Copilot, trying to analyze your repositories and building a logical tree of your repository. These are not files and folders. This is the logics, the logical reasoning. You can't see it quite well here. I took a console library for working with clouds. It says we have the main piece of software, we have the following commands, they use utilities, and they use APIs of cloud storage. So they can provide you a generic overview of what's going on. The same for the explain. It has architecture view, it works a bit differently, it outputs a different result a little bit. It varies by the tool, but you may find this interesting if you don't have documentation, but you still want to figure out what's going on in your project. This plugin also has a file tree that enables you to view files as a tree, helping you to orient yourself. There is also code viz. They all work differently. Some use Copilot, others use their own models. So you need to give this a shot, give this a try, and you'll see for yourself. So, okay, we got an idea of how a code base works. We start reading code, trying to figure out what is going on. A typical approach is reading code, building logical connections in your head, but sometimes it doesn't work out quite well. I use this classic example for all the testing of tools, because this is one of the most terrible chunks of code I've ever read. This is from a piece of software for interaction with cloud storage. It has a list buckets command. It calls the rank command. It calls a class method and relays its own object. It pulls some API, but API is defined in a command somewhere. It's not clear what it does. So you have to jump around here and there trying to figure out what these methods do. We would love the IDE to help us to figure this out. There are pieces of software building a call graph. So chartographer builds a chart. There is an input point, it calls a command, it has a run. This run calls another run, then lists buckets, then something gets printed. It's not clear, it doesn't follow from this that a certain API is called. We take another plugin, Explain. It shows us something. It does show that something is being typed, is being printed. It's not clear either. I tried using another plugin, Source Code Visualizer. I move along the call graph, call chart, and it says, I don't know what the implementation is. What is the problem? Automatically, due to the dynamic properties of Python, unless we have a runtime, automatic display of graphs is not possible. Func factory, it returns a given function. And which one? How do we solve this? We only know that in the runtime. We have our hands and our brain. We can do it on our own manually. But we can use our IDE as a helpful tool. Source Code Visualizer helps you to depict chunks of code on a graph and determine dependencies, interconnections. So I have these chunks of code, and I can actually see what is going on. There is a call, and this is the functions that are being called. We have to do that manually, but this is our case. There is code comprehension. There is yet another plugin. I'm not going to drill down on this, a similar one. On files, we can select a specific file which is important. This actually caused my brain to explode. For those who are starting out, Color blocks would be an important plugin that highlights blocks of code. It's useful because you can specify the color and how many lines, how many strings are to be highlighted. This serves for debugging purposes, for making notes. You can highlight a chunk of code to have it handy at all times. There are a bunch of plugins that highlight chunks of code, blocks of code, where a cycle starts, where a cycle ends. It's a variety of plugins. They work pretty much the same way. They logically highlight blocks, like Pi scope. It shows the beginning and the end. Another point, highlight, important plugin. Highlight allows you to highlight annotations, comments, to-do, fix me, etc. What's the big thing about it? You can determine your own regular statements. For instance, you cannot write something to self-class. So it can say that you're using an anti-pattern, so you can define your own regular expressions. Let's get back to the file trees. Why do we want to see files we want to see? Some files can be hidden. I have a trash bin of cache files, virtual environment. It's there, but it can hide it, and I'll only keep the files I need for the purposes of my project. Fold level. I've just discovered it recently. It's awesome as well. We can hide specific chunks of code with folding, as it's called. The depth of folding is determined by this plugin. If I want to see what's inside methods, I insert folding. It says that this command calls API and something is returned as an output. If it's way too much, I can set level 2. And I will only see methods for classes. If it's way too much, I will only see classes and global variables. What's the whole point of it? Not only does it work with Python code, it also works with JSON. Sometimes you have a whole long list of JSON. Even if you formatted lots of fields, lots of text, you can hide some fields. First look at depth level 1, then you can dig deeper. This slide reminds me that, stop it, Alexander, let's proceed with part 2. Input. When preparing this presentation, I thought, why don't we introduce this feature? We write code and we write some easy-to-understand comments at the same time. If it's complex code, we can do some markdown, or we can build a diagram into the code itself. Code, description, diagram, description, code. I was so proud to have invented it, but it was invented back in 1984 by Donald E. Knuth. You see the book title, and this is what we see in Jupyter notebooks. Code, some results. Below, we can see some markdown and more code below. But this is no full-fledged code. We would like to see this in code. Jupyter is not code. This is like rather a notebook for research purposes. What I found for VS Code, there's comments as markdown. So you write comments as markdown, and by pressing the button, they can be rendered immediately. And there are no other plugins available. Removing the routine from our programming. Why write something if you can avoid this? There is this folder templates plugin to create structures for projects. You run a command, and a given tree or the file system is created. And you can start writing your business code right away. For instance, a component has been created right here. It turns out that this light bulb that is displayed when writing code, sometimes it is indeed useful. I always ignore it as visual noise, but it turns out that once you have determined abstract basic classes and you write its implementation, you can press this light bulb button. It will display a menu. Create all required methods. So roughly speaking, it creates the methods you need to write implementations for. Also very useful, please sometimes check out this light bulb, jumping around the code. On multiple occasions, I see developers digging in DLL files. Why do this if you have hotkeys? The most frequently used are navigate back and navigate forward. Every time you change the placement of a cursor, actually it is being stored. You can jump around this. You write something in one location, then you switch over to a file, you fix something, you have to go back. By pressing a hotkey, you can get exactly to the point where you left off, thus navigating across the history of your editing. This is an awesome tool, very useful. Bookmarks It's a vital plugin for me. These are not the bookmarks you think about. So you can add these symbols or signs or characters. If you need to highlight a chunk of code and return back to it, you leave these bookmarks, you save them, and they are well organized. You found a bug, for instance, when releasing a feature, you mark it with a bookmark, you finalize the feature, you fixed it, and then you go back to fix the bug. Oh, very useful. Path, go to definition. The whole code, VS Code believes that any string is a string, but quite often a string is just a path to a file, to template, for instance. And you might want to go back to this template and add something. It understands absolute and relative paths, and you can click on that and you can go straight to a text file or an HTML file. Basically, most problems of navigating across code are solved through hotkeys. Highly recommended. And by the way, Microsoft publishes such cheat sheets on the VS Code website, available for VS Code on Windows and Linux. If you say, no, I'm lazy, there is key promoter. If you perform a certain action frequently, it will suggest hotkeys for that. Such a feature is available for PyCharm. In VS Code, it's not working quite well due to the restrictions of the IDE itself, but at least we have something. That's better than nothing. If we want to investigate a chunk of code, we need superpowers. For instance, we need to be able to test regular expressions right in our development environment. There are a bunch of plugins for that. This saves you the need to visit third-party websites. Indent nested dictionary. You can input any kind of dictionary, unformatted. I cut it in half, insert it in VS Code, apply the plugin. It provides neat and nice formatting. It saved my life multiple times when you have dirty data. It tries to format it nicely. It works with JSON, it works with Python dictionaries as well. Timestamp previewer. It converts Unix time to human-readable time. We gradually transition to AI. I'll really touch upon them real quick. If you're asking yourself a question, which model to go for to chat regarding your code, I like this lazy approach. Don't check models separately. I visit Web Dev Arena and checked up the leaderboard, which is the most upvoted one. Here is an example, Web Dev Arena leaderboard, so we can check the upvoted ones. Auto-completion, LLMs, there are thousands of them. It's difficult to choose from. I actively use Copilot. Why? Because it features inline edits. You don't have to go to any chat. You can ask the model right away in the plugin. There is the button, refactor it. There are voice commands. You can tell it what this code does, and it's going to respond. There are extensions, there is next edit. Not only can you chat with the model like in a chat, but you also can enable various plugins, asking the model, what was the latest thing in Sender? It will actually provide a response. There is a free limit. If you want to give this a try, it has a free trial, it has a limit. They have lots of changelogs, but there is continuous progress. It keeps developing. That's a good thing. That's right. We're not limited to chats. Features in Copilot are released on a regular basis. Windsurf, this is a decent model. I also use that. We have Codeim. I'm not going to drill down on this. This is a topic for a separate presentation, optimization. How do we write VS Code so that it is optimized? How do we perform debugging? If I debug code, I write log debug. In the worst case, I say print, and the code gets contaminated with these expressions. You can install log points, they're going to print something, but the code is going to be neat and clean. We all know that you can run scripts and debugging right from the IDE by pressing a single button. I like the Unix philosophy. Actually, I can run a script manually using this debug py and VS Code will connect for debugging session. We have conditioned breakpoints. This is when breakpoints fire off at a given condition. If iteration equals something, then it is triggered. The triggered breakpoints. If a given breakpoint is triggered, another one will be triggered. How do we look for errors and bugs? We have Copilot next edit. As you write code, what does it do? As you write code, it suggests the most appropriate next change. As you write bad code with bugs, with mistakes, and it suggests, wouldn't you want to rewrite this properly? If you have mistakes in your code, it will suggest edits. It's awesome. We have Copilot review. Please give your expert opinion regarding this code. Do you like it? Normally we use rough, all of us. It dovetails with error lens that displays the bad things about the performance. It's a dangerous thing. When you open a project without type annotation, everything gets highlighted. There are workarounds for that. We're not going to cover these. It's awesome when you write code and you see that you forgot to do the type annotation, or you did something badly. I have to mention SonarQube 346 rules for checks and debugging. Probably you know this. The team that made RUF, the Astral team that released RUF and UV, they're now working, it's not released yet, for a static code analyzer, TY. It is already available. There is a preview in VS Code. It works already. I gave this a shot. I tried to add a string to an integer, and it does complain about that, which is correct. We can move methods, we can move variables if it's not sufficient. We can use Copilot that helps to explain code, fix something, generate review, generate docs, generate tests. Security. Let's talk about security a little bit. There are a variety of plugins from various sources. And how do we avoid malwares? When you install a plugin, there is a checkbox. It says, domain confirmed, no malware released over the last 6 months from this developer. If it's not sufficient, automated checks are run continuously. When an extension is updated, it gets double-checked. All the extensions we run, the Microsoft corporation keeps track of their behavior. It checks for name squatting, so you cannot possibly make a spelling mistake and install a random plugin. If there is malware, the malware will be automatically removed from your VS Code and from the market at the same time. Let's talk about other IDEs real quick. If you want to get more, if you want to enjoy a different experience, if VS Code is not sufficient, I have to mention Cursor, Windsurf, Try, and lots of others, IDEs and plugins which are more geared towards AI and its integration in development and IDEs. This is a dedicated topic. I'm not going to elaborate on this. I rather support hardcore programming with minimum support from AI. I try to be as fast as possible. That's all, folks. Here is my website. I wanted to respect the time limit. I forgot to post this PowerPoint to the website. Here is the link. I just updated the presentation. Please feel free to contact me via Telegram. Thank you very much.
Это было хорошо. Быстро.
That was awesome.
Давай разыграем книжку.
It was fast-paced, but very impressive. Let's award the book prize for best question. Thank you very much for your presentation. Here I am. Hello.
Спасибо.
That's an awesome T-shirt. I love it. Thank you. You touched upon other IDEs. This is a type of VS Code. I would like to get to know more of your opinions. Not about forks of IDEs, but forks overall. There are two approaches. It's either you take VS Code, install a bunch of extension, and you fine-tune it to fit your needs. And there are other forks. So I wonder, what is your attitude towards forks? Probably you don't need them. Probably you should rather write a separate extension. This is a pretty interesting topic. These are two different approaches. There are various types of development, and tastes differ. Yes, these are two different ideologies.
You can install all the plugin, it's going to fly, it's going to be for you. Well, it's a separate topic. And this is VS Code, and this is almost VS Code. It's just a fork. I support both sides. It's sometimes I'm lazy to tune it up. Those terminal emulators I've installed Fish because it's out of the box, everything works and nothing has to be set up. But with Code, I spend most of the time there. So I prefer granularity in settings. In other IDE, there's a lot of things like pie chart that I'm not using. The cursor, I don't need such deep integration. I think the best tool, it's a tool that you assemble for yourself. Okay, as one of the options, some people make forks out of the code, plugins for themselves. Possibly the ideology is different, that we want to do everything with our own hands, so we want to call it ourselves, we want to attach our own logo. Yeah.
That's all forks.
And then on the final picture, it's going to be, that's all forks. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Kirill. I would like to ask you, do you know plugins to simplify work with C extensions and to debug such programs? I'm not Nikita. I'm not working C and Python simultaneously, that's why. So I have not even dig in this direction. Thank you for the presentation. Who knows? Give me your hand. You see the hand? Drink coffee with this guy and check his data. That's it. Wonderful. Next. I have another question. You've made a lot of examples of plugins, etc., but you said nothing about why, if all these plugins are needed, why not for HR? It has a lot of different things like that. And I will tell you, I don't like PyCharm. I prefer Nikita Sobolev's topic, only code and minimum irritants. However, if you need a lot of plugins, integrations, some interrelations, etc., then maybe you should take a tool which has it all and work normally, because it's paid, it's not made by 3 open source developers underneath, and it's not supported anymore. So it looks like, okay, let's take a block node, and from 2 developers from 1 country and 1 Chinese guy will assemble all the plugins and they will work, no cross-integration. The support may be, but what's the sense if you need a lot? Maybe you need to use the right tools for it. I agree. And then I'm going to help you. You've been listening to masterclass how to briefly speak on somebody else's presentation with your own ideas. Good job. It's the right thing to do. I was expecting that somebody will speak about PyCharm. You know, we did an experiment in our company. We have created a table who is PyCharm VS Code, and we create feature PyCharm VS Code in PyCharm. Out of the box, in VS Code, all the columns, install this plugin and it's going to work. Basically, you know, different people like different things. Some people like PyCharm, everything's in build, and everybody who's programming, I say, install PyCharm and don't think. VS Code is more about control, extendability, freebies.
На самом деле вкусовщина.
Honestly, it's all
У меня был один аргумент.
taster's choice. I had only one argument. I have installed PyCharm. It was slowed down. Then I've installed VS Code, and since then I'm not living in. That's my basic argument that I have. Accepted. Thank you. Thank you.
Добрый день.
Next one. Hello. I have the following question. Sometimes, well, you mentioned that you use Copilot and it scans code. Sometimes you want to work with projects where safety is important and you don't want to scan anything, but sometimes you need to do it because Copilot simplifies development. How can you integrate these two methods? IDE, that's one thing, but somewhere we want to use Copilot, somewhere we don't want to use it because of the absence of the code scanning. I think this is more a question to how this is organized in this security contract, but nobody prohibits you from taking models and launch them locally. Once again, you go to the code arena, you look at which model is liked by most of the people. If it's available public, use it for yourself with licenses.
Ну, тут как бы с Microsoft и с Copilot
Well,
вообще такая история.
as for Microsoft and Copilot, the story is following. We use GitHub from Microsoft, VS Code, which is from Microsoft, collects telemetry. We use Copilot, also from Microsoft, sends data. So
Безопасник, наверное,
it's understandable that safety guy will hold his head and he'll say, do it differently.
соответственно, VS Code
Therefore,
телеметрию, GitHub
we switch off telemetry, we don't use GitHub,
Спасибо.
and we switch it for something safe. Thank you. Wonderful. Let's continue. Okay, guys, we have time until 1:20 with questions, so maybe somebody will be missed, but we will try. Alexander, hello. Thank you for your presentation. It was very useful. Well, I will install something out of your selection using the code, but I have another question about the speed. Maybe something wrong with me, but sometimes VS Code, it takes 1 minute, minute and a half to launch a program. I don't use Graph, but my Pi, it takes like half a minute to do it. Are there any plugins to increase the speed
Я знаю только
or do something in settings? Well, I know that all plugins are to reduce the speed. Never heard about improvement.
вирус выключить там такое.
Maybe antivirus will switch it off. Well, I'm on Linux. I'm waiting for some virus to arrive. Well, it's a proper question, a more general question. We've installed a lot of different things. It will be slowed down. And if there's something regular, that will light it up.
Все подряд. Я же
That's why don't install it all together. That's why I'm saying
а только
I don't have all this zoo, maybe only some plugins which were checked, some bookmarks, fault.
тормозит. Это очень такой общий
Why is it slowing down? It's a general question.
какой-то серебряный пуль.
And no silver bullet that will suddenly speed it up, and you will have to fix it up. Typical answer of the programmer. You have to clear it out. You'll come to the professional conference, and then they will give you 17 silver bullets, and whee, and you fly. Right. Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I have the following question. Do you have
Безопасники, DLP,
cyber security people, DLPs, etc.?
если есть, как оно сдружит с всякими...
And if you do, how it works with these different extensions, and if you would move to PyCharm out-of-the-box solution, if you have the security guys. Well, about security.
Месяца 3 назад случайно
Perhaps about 3 months ago, we have just discovered that I have committed private key in a repository, and it was there for 6 months. This is what you have to know about security, people from our team. I'm the main destroyer of the security in the company.
то есть с каждым
We don't have these problems. With each client, we discuss whether it's possible to use Copilot in their project. No client said no. It's specifics of our projects. We're a small company. I'm not from a big corporation, and it's a totally different story. And what would you choose if you would implement some DLP, installation of applications, etc., etc.? Would you go to... Would you remove extension and would you stay on a VS Code without extensions or PyCharm?
на самом деле
Well, PyCharm,
Джуни, эти, которые
it also has some Juni and those that send.
Microsoft. Если ты платишь там,
Whether we send to PyCharm or Microsoft, because if you say for the license of PyCharm, here, yeah, I need to test the extension for the cyber security. It's a question of trust. Which company do you trust? If not everything has been prohibited, you can launch it locally. And right now, for some private things, I have only a local model. Video card, 16 gigabytes, will work with something like that complicated. Thank you. Is it okay? Do we continue press conference? Yeah, New York Times. Yeah, welcome. Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. I came because I'm writing to Visual Studio, and Visual Studio is not a friend of submodels. When you work with Git repository, you connect submodules, and it just can't push it or spool it in the normal way, or you should do global settings of something that with attachment of Git pull, all submodules should be pulled. Do you have any other plugins which help you to resolve the situation? And possibly I'll switch to this new IDE if you have breaking point like that. Yeah, there is a plugin called Hands. I use it every day. Go to terminal. I write git pull, git somebody need. Why? Because honestly, I've noticed the trend that novices, they don't know these commands. They click IDEs, commit, stash, etc., and they don't think what happens under the hood. And I don't like the fact that IDE makes us complacent, gives us interface, and we forget how to work with Git, what teams are available, what commands are available. Well, this is a Unix philosophy. For Git, there's Git, and if this Visual Studio doesn't work, maybe it's better. Okay, thank you very much. It's just my view. Sorry, step forward to the light. You've been speaking about plugins for saying the difference between different projects so that you would mix them. What should you do in this situation if you have a workspace with big number of interrelated projects, and how inside this workspace you can see the difference between projects? Because very often I see the situation that within this workspace there are things that are overcrossing. How don't I mix them? Well, it's an interesting question. I didn't have such an experience. One workspace, usually one project. Well, roughly speaking, project consists of a lot of different repositories. One part of the project in one, another one is in another one. So you need to change the space. But the space inside, they are really similar. And sometimes there is a situation when you mix up and you change the wrong file. So things like that, how can we say the difference between them? Well, the situation is awful, especially when you don't change the right file, which you think that you're changing. I never faced this situation, so I never looked at this topic. If I knew, I would look at something. Okay, thank you. Welcome. Good presentation. But you started with positivity, ended with negativity. I like the only slide with the squirrel. And I wanted to say a couple of words about it. Why? It's year 25, 21st century. Everybody uses clouds and their cloud IDE. Don't worry about PyCharm, which doesn't work with Java. You shouldn't be this world. Open the browser. You have Copilot. If you don't like foreign AWS Cloud 9, VK has produced safe code. Whatever. All the plugins are available out there with syntaxes, selection. Everything's modern, beautiful, and it works on any notebook. It could be advertising of the paid cloud. Yeah, with all this. Tidish. Yeah, you can add it yourself. But why people don't use cloud gaming? Why people buy computers, buy expensive video? If you can pay NVIDIA or VK, play 500 rubles a month and you can play. Why don't everybody does it? So that you can approach your friend and say, well, applying you is not included, not switched on. Let me switch it on. Well, it's not always you have access to this cloud, first of all. In Moscow, there was a parade, but we are not going to a parade. We don't have access. We cannot sit in the cafeteria. The internet got broken. Let's go to our summer house. But the main question is a question of trust and control. Do I completely trust to store everything in the cloud? And second of all, this cloud may create some another smart feature which will destroy all my IDE. With like Windows with all the Excels. Today they have one location, tomorrow they have changed everything, and it has. Well, the question of safety. Okay, you said as one of the first things, as one of your first rules, Unix way. Why all these plugins? If the main objective is just to fix the code, why don't you take Vim and then... Well, nobody writes on a clean Vim. They enrich, tune it up, etc. So the question to this two, who writes on pure Vim? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we have people like that. Okay, I don't see how do you write on a pure Vim. Vim enhanced with syntaxes show up. Beautiful. When you don't want to argue, you just look in the eyes and you say, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. 40 seconds and 2 questions. I don't know what's going to be done. Thank you very much for your presentation, Alexander. Question number 1. Have you used PyCharm? Very actively. Then I have a question about refactoring. You missed this slide. Any JetBrains product has very good refactoring with structured interface, top indexes, which allows us to quickly change the names of functions in code. So I have the following question. In order to achieve something similar in VS Code, they use LSP servers, Playwright, for example, but it's incremental. It doesn't hold the whole code. It has some data structure inside of it. Do you have anything modern, more modern way to provide this refactoring functionality to all the project, especially if it's big? And the second question, what is the complexity about writing something similar realization that already exists in PyCharm? Well, the problem is super important because for a long period of time, there was even less polyfactoring in VS Code. You couldn't transform any method somewhere. And when I switched to it, I was hating VS Code just because of this. But right now, something you can use Copilot, but the situation is painful. When you rename the variable, it can rename some similar name that was previously available. It irritates, really. It's a bad situation. I didn't find anything, similar looking just at the Copilot. So it's a good question. Why wouldn't anybody write it? Please write. Any question to the open source? Why don't you write this code? I wanted to write something to the presentation, show it to you. Well, I was able just to make the presentation. That's it. Open source, as if. Okay, who has private life? Sorry, your time is up. Everybody says it. Very quickly, team lead runs. Okay, man, just for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Okay, right now we're going to take the microphone from Sasha and you can approach him and get exclusive answer to you. And who asked questions? Who should get the book? Only one book, yeah. I like the question about refactoring, not because I have memory only for one question, but because really it's important and it's really painful when somebody says, what about refactoring? And I say, okay, can I leave? That's why, good. My suggestion, the person who asked the question, come here and select the book. And right now, conference merge is for you, for the memory. Thanks for answers, thanks for questions. Thank you guys for asking those questions. So go to the stage and select the book. Tonight. While colleague selects a book, tonight there will be stand-up networking and you have to get registered to this party. Nobody will let you in. Please register yourself. And in 11 minutes, we are going to have foreign guest super expert get ready. And right now we have a small break. Breathe in,
Продолжаем.
breathe some warm air.